All right, welcome, pranams, blessings to you all. So happy to gather here again for our live community sessions. Thank you all for your patience this summer. We had a really full summer here on our little Ayurvedic farm in Southern Oregon. And so I've kind of taken off the live classes for the last 2 months, but now we're back and all the fields are planted and all the herbs are growing and all the cows are happy and fed, and there'll be some beautiful abundance on its way for the late summer and fall harvests. We like to feed our community here as a seva, as a service, just from our hearts. We just love it. We just love it. We don't have a large farm, but we just love growing food and being in that connection with the land and nourishing others. So on the topic of nourishment today, glad you're all here. And for those of you watching this recording, we're all glad you're here too. And today we want to dive into this topic of Ayurvedic nutrition. And Ayurvedic nutrition is so much more about just what you put in your mouth every day. Nutrition, and from the Ayurvedic perspective, has to do with the nourishment of all of our 7 bodily tissues and our emotional body as well. So there's a direct correlation, as you'll come to discover today, through this beautiful system of what we call the Sapta Dhatu system, the Sapta Dhatu nutrition, which Sapta means 7. Dhatus are our bodily tissues. We all have 7 bodily tissues that are created from the food that we eat, but not only from the food that we eat, from everything that we consume through our 5 senses, and this impacts in an intricately woven way our body, mind, our mental experience, our emotional experience, our sense of connection to ourself, our sense of it translates into our sense of connection to our creator, to nature, to the world around us. And when we can really create in our daily habits basically just this process of nourishment, when we can really create through our daily habits, foster an environment of support for our body, our mind, our spirit, then all of the tissues get the nourishment that they're deeply craving. So sometimes imbalances in the body are simply because these tissues aren't receiving the nourishment that they need. So what we're going to explore today is the role of our Agni, or our digestive fire, the role of the digestive fire in the sequential formation of the Sapta Dhatu, the 7 bodily tissues, and the nourishment of our emotions. And so through this process, you'll discover a lens through which to look at your own body and body, mind, spirit, and environment around you through this lens of nourishment, and through a whole new perspective that goes way beyond calories in and calories out and just energy formation, or kind of a very black and white, bland, elementary kind of look at cellular formation. Because remember, Ayurveda is the science and the wisdom of life, which means we are studying through this practice of Ayurveda, through this deepening of our understanding of Ayurvedic wisdom. We are studying the beautiful, intricate weavings of all of the essential elements of life, ether, air, fire, water, and earth, in their functional aliveness. This isn't about, dissecting something in a lab, in a sterile environment, or a dead body. We are talking about the life that is in the bodies and how they function on not only a gross physical level, but also on a more refined, energetic, subtle energy level, on an emotional level, and on a spiritual level, or on the sense of our soul and our connection to that aspect of us that keeps our heart beating and our lungs pulsing, the intelligence of the cosmos that exists within our physical form and beyond, because we're so much more than a physical form. So the system of Ayurveda is dealing with the intricacies of this aliveness. And so we are studying a living science, a living system of beauty and aliveness, pulsating consciousness in our form. And so the optimization of health then becomes not just how can I get these gains or heal myself from sickness. It actually becomes more of an unfolding of your higher awareness, your consciousness in your body and in your localized experience of your human existence. Such beautiful concepts. So we'll start today by, I'll start with some lineage prayers that honor my teachers that have come before me and that have taught me this science, to which I'm forever indebted to and grateful for. And so I'll sing those in Sanskrit, some lineage prayers, and that'll also just help us all together drop into a little bit of a meditative space. And when we can take a few deep breaths together and drop into a meditative space, it just allows us to be really open to receiving communication that is so much more than what translates through language and so much more than what comes through the mind. So you may want to be taking notes while while we're talking, which is fine, but don't feel pressured to do so. Don't do so at the expense of missing just the openness of kind of the greater energy transmission from the Ayurveda, which is the essence of the knowledge that is wanting to come through. And one logistical thing I can do to help you out with that is after today's class, I will share my notes with you. So as long as, most likely if you're on this live session, you're already on my email list, and that's how you got access to the live class. Those of you who are listening to the recording, you might want to make sure, if you want to get the notes after the class, just make sure you go ahead and register on my website. So alicialyndiaz.com. And then you can click on the button. It either says workshops or trauma healing, because these monthly live classes started with the angle of Ayurvedic psychology and healing trauma. And then we're covering all these topics within Ayurveda that help us understand the emotional, psychological body as well as our physical health. So you can click on that button, trauma healing or workshops, and just register there. And then you'll get, I will, after today's class, I'll send the recording of today's class, and I will send the PDF forms of the notes from today. Okay, sound good? I hope that's helpful. And if any questions that are coming up throughout the class, you're welcome to type them in the chat, but I will probably, like, while they're fresh for you, you can type them in the chat. But I'll probably stop closer to the end of this hour to hour and a half together. I will check the chat when I have a moment of pause in my own flowing of thoughts and chatting at you. And then we'll enter into some dialogue. Some of you emailed in questions, so I'll answer those as well throughout the class. And then I'll share this educational perspective. And I will leave you today with at least 4 solid kind of take home practical things that you can do to start optimizing the health of all these bodily systems that we're discussing today. And some of you may want more to kind of take out the guesswork on how to apply this to your own life. And so you might prefer to have a personalized consultation. And so I've opened a few spots in my calendar, so you can do that, and I will send you the link to that via email. I could probably put it in the chat at the end of class too. So if you want just a personal one-on-one session, so you know exactly your Ayurvedic nutrition needs are taken care of and optimizing all these systems, then, and you have health concerns or health goals, then we can have a consultation for that too. So just know I'm here to be of your service and support. Okay, so let us drop into a little bit of a few deep breaths. I'll chant some invocation mantras just to honor the lineage of Ayurveda that I've been empowered through, and then we'll dive into today's topic. So first, just taking a couple deep breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth if that feels good. And just starting to deepen your breath. Feel yourself come into your seat, into your body, into your sense of self, into your center. Feel your feet, feel your hips, feel the earth beneath you supporting you. And we'll chant Om together once, and then I'll offer the invocation mantra. Deep breath in and exhale with Om. Om. Namami Dhanvan Tarimadi Devam Surasurervandita Pada Padamam Loke Jararu Bhayamrityunashanam Tataramisham Vividhoshadinam Namami Dhanvan Tarimadi Devam Surasurervandita Pada Padamam Loke Jararu Bhayamrityunashanam Tataramisham Vividhoshadinam. Om Dhanvantare Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, can you see my whiteboard? Yeah? Okay, thank you, Kaylee. All right, so at its essence, so the Sapta Dhatu Nutrition, meaning the 7 bodily tissues, are all sequentially nourished by the food that we put into our body. And the food that we put into our body is not only the physical food and drink, but it is also everything we feed our 5 senses. So everything you see visually, everything that your eyes consume, everything that you hear through sound, so everything that your ears consume, also the flavor of your food, like the 6 tastes that land on your tongue, everything that your mouth consumes, everything that your skin consumes. So all of the sensations in your body, whether that be equilibrium, whether that be just the general tactile sense of touch, the cloth on your skin, the earth on your feet, or the concrete on your feet. This is all input. This is all being digested and received into your system. So everything you also scent, that's the one I didn't mention yet. Everything that you breathe in, the freshness of the air, or the stagnation of the air, the smell, the fragrance of essential oils or flowers, anything that you breathe in. So, and through the sense of scent. So everything that you see, taste, touch, hear, and smell, in Ayurveda we call Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. All the forms that you take in through these five senses are food. Your mind is also one of the senses, if you will, in that the mind is constantly fabricating its thoughts, stories. The ahankar is making meanings of things that these thoughts come up with. And so you are also digesting thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and memories that come up into your awareness. So you're digesting not only everything that's in the world around you, your immediate world that you're seeing, but you're also feeding yourself through the fabrication of your own thoughts and mental meanderings, right? So the information that you take in, you are digesting. So this is all considered food. So as we're talking about food, we have to remember that food is bigger than what we take out of our fridge and put on our plate and eat with a fork or spoon, right? Or with our hands. So this is all food, and this is all part of the subtle digestion and the mental digestion, but it all influences the physical bodily tissues and the digestion. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to draw a diagram that you can understand a little bit more of this physical gross food, while understanding that with the physical food that you eat, your digestion or your agni will digest, absorb, and assimilate the nutrients for that food, not only for energy production, which is one of the first effects that it has, but also for the nourishment of these 7 bodily tissues in sequence. So the first thing, and this will be very crude drawing, so have fun with my little crude finger drawings. I usually have a whiteboard. Those are still crude, but anyway, this is just a little visual depiction, hopefully to make it easy. Okay. So this is your stomach. So first there's food coming into your mouth, where I don't have space at the top to imagine a mouth, but imagine your head is at the top of the system and you're chewing, and this is the first stage of digestion, is chewing. So as you chew the food, it liquefies and it enters this organ first. It spends about 2 hours here in your stomach, and your stomach releases all kinds of digestive enzymes, gastric intrinsic factor. Different organs are releasing different hydrochloric acid and enzymes to start to liquefy and break down these macro particles of food that you just digested into something that is smaller and can be then metabolized by the next stage of your digestion, which is your small intestine. So I'm going to depict that here in a very crude, not to scale, of course, drawing. So we're just going to imagine that the food goes from the stomach and then enters the small intestine. And then it spends about 2 hours. These little microvilli in your small intestine, there's microscopic little finger-like protrusions, and those little tiny particles that the stomach breaks down kind of crawl along these little finger-like protrusions. And in that, vitamins and nutrients are being absorbed. There are also millions of different probiotic cultures that live in this part of your gut that are also receiving the nutrients that you're giving them. And the probiotic cultures are ones that are supportive of your body. So there's millions of these cultures that have hopefully really taken real estate in your small intestine. And what they do is that they also eat these nutrients, and then their excretions, which would be like their kind of waste products, are vitamins. They're vitamins and nutrients that your body then absorbs. So there's a symbiotic relationship here. So the food goes through this part of your small intestine for another couple of hours, and it's continuing to extract. And then it enters the food bolus that was now liquefied, that has slowly moved through your small intestines for all this time, is now going into your colon. And so the third and final stage of the gross aspects of digestion and are this third part, which is your colon. And so the food goes from, it leaves from the distal part of your small intestine, and it enters into the colon, and it slowly moves through here until it is packed in the most distal part of your colon, which is the furthest part of the colon. And then that is then the formation of what will be excreted by you the next day. So there's waste product. Now, what happens in the colon, in a healthy functioning colon, is that the colon is astringing. So this is the third stage of digestion, which takes another about 2 hours. So now we're looking at a 6-hour period. So from the time you eat, depends on how fast or slow your digestion moves, but it's roughly a 4 to 6 hour process from food to go from your mouth all the way to getting packed into this distal part of your colon, which is the formation of feces to be eliminated. So during this 6 hours, in each stage of digestion, there's different qualities and nutrients that are absorbed through each stage of digestion. So there's minerals and hydration and salts and different things all kind of absorbed here from the colon, and they're absorbed through these little microcapillaries. And this is called ahara rasa. So in Ayurveda, this is called ahara rasa, which just means it's the most raw form of nourishment. So you eat, and the most grossest, when I say grossest, I don't mean disgusting. I mean like the biggest kind of substance that is the most unrefined is yielded from each stage of digestion. And then each stage of digestion goes and yields different nutrients, which we won't get too into today, because that goes into what are the 6 stages of digestion, what are the six tastes on the palate, and how do we optimize that through the flavor of our food. So if we wanted to take that route, we would go down the route of like an Ayurvedic cooking class, right? And there are beautiful ways to do that, and we can talk about that all at another time. But right now, will suffice to say these main stages of digestion are yielding different nutrients from the stomach, the small intestine, and the colon. As long as all these stages of digestion are working properly, it's yielding the raw materials, which we call ahara rasa. It's yielding the raw materials in being absorbed into the bloodstream. So then from here, we go, whoops, hold on. Let me see if I can get my drawing to work. Okay. So from here, those macronutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream, and then it's all pumped to your heart, and then your heart is circulating it throughout your body. This is a little diagram that Dr. Vasant Lad, my second mentor in Ayurveda, used to teach, and I just love this visual. Whoops. I love this visual because it just really made sense to my brain. So this is all getting absorbed, ahara rasa, it's brought to the heart, and then the heart goes and continues to circulate these raw materials through all the bodily tissues, right? Okay, so now the refinement process begins. So the refinement process begins, and as the nutrients, so whatever, depending on the time it is that you're joining, that you're joining in, think about the previous meal you had before joining this class. So I'm just going to use lunch as an example. So the lunch that you ate today, the raw materials of that lunch are circulating through your body. And in 5 days, I'm going to leave some details out because this isn't a practitioner's training and we don't have all the time today, but I want you to have a take-home message or a take-home imprint on what's really happening in your body. Okay. So I'm skipping a few steps, but the 5 days from today, the lunch that you ate, for example, will become the first of the 7 bodily tissues. So that ahara rasa, the raw materials circulating in the blood, will become this first bodily tissue. And let's see if I can even write. It's kind of hard to write on this little board. R-A-S-A, rasa. Again, this will all be in your notes too. Especially if you're already on my email list, I'll email out the notes and you'll have a whole table describing. Actually, let's see, while I'm screen sharing, does the table show up on your view? Or is it still the whiteboard? Okay, no table, just whiteboard. So I will share the table with you after we go through the visual then. Oh. Go back. Oh, look, I can do new share. Okay, no, let's just go back to here. Thanks for your patience. I'm still learning this new system. Is my whiteboard still showing on full screen? Okay. So this first tissue, rasa, you might notice it's similar to the first name we just said, the raw materials, which was ahara rasa, which is the most raw of the materials. And then it creates this first tissue, which we call rasa. Now, rasa in the physical body is your plasma and your lymph. So it's the most liquid. It does this function that we call prenanam, which is the nourishment, nutrition of all the rest of the tissues. So the rasa is the first bodily tissue that provides nourishment and nutrition to the rest of all the bodily tissues. So rasa is circulating through the body. And there are a couple different stages, 2 different stages of each of these tissues. And I'm going to back up for 1 second just to illustrate this point. I'm going to put it is that what's responsible for the transformation of this food into the tissues is the agni. So I'm trying to draw a fire. That's a fire. So there's what we call jatara agni, which is in the stomach. There's a fire along all the stages of your digestion. And there's a fire indicated by this orange dot. There's a fire that transforms the ahara rasa into rasa. So basically, rasa is in its immature state when it's ahara, and then it becomes the mature plasma and lymph in the body in its mature state. From rasa, then in 5 more days, so if in 5 days from now, the lunch that you had today, or the last meal you had, 5 days from today, it will be your plasma and lymph of your body. So once that tissue is properly nourished, it passes on to the next layer of refinement, its nourishment to the following tissue, which is Rakta. Now, Rakta is your red blood cells. So in Ayurveda, we don't look at the blood as plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells like that, like all as one. We look at them as 2 different tissues. So the rasa is the plasma part, and then the Rakta is the red blood cells part. So the Rakta is it blinking on your screen or just my screen? It's blinking? Oh, that's so weird. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to stop share and reshare. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if it's more stable. So first 5 days, the meal you ate today becomes your lymph and plasma. Your lymph and plasma. In 5 more days, the red blood cells are created from that rasa tissue. So once the rasa is nourished, it passes its nutrients on to the Rakta Dhatu, which are the red blood cells. 5 days later, the Rakta Dhatu passes on, and the next tissue becomes even more refined, and it becomes what we call Mamsa Dhatu. Mamsa Dhatu is the muscle tissue. Mamsa Dhatu is the muscle tissue. So the muscle tissue is responsible for your form, your ability to move, all the muscle tissues, skeletal muscle, as well as smooth muscle of your organs, as well as your heart muscle. Every type of muscle in your body is Mamsa Dhatu and is built from rasa and rakta. The nutrients are passed from rakta into Mamsa. So Mamsa Dhatu is responsible for your general sense of safety in your body, a sense of satisfaction and a sense of strength, which you can imagine because when your muscles are feeling strong, you feel capable, you feel, there's a sense of satisfaction, meaning I don't feel depleted and hungry. I feel content, I feel satisfied, right? There's a sense of I can back myself because my muscles are strong. Therefore, there's a sense of safety. So I'm going to back up because we covered Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa for now, and I didn't give all of the emotional layers of Rasa and Rakta. So Rasa is responsible for Prinana. Prinana means nourishment, and nutrition, which I mentioned. It's also responsible for immunity, so that it's kind of dips into the white blood cell kind of concept in Western medicine. But the status of your Rasa Dhatu, plasma and lymph, is also a connection to your immunity to the outside world. Emotionally, Rasa is a very rich word in the Sanskrit language. Rasa also means taste and flavor, but there are dozens of different, like 40 different translations for the word rasa that we have in English. There are all the different, in Indian classical music, there are at least a dozen different rasas that they learn, which are moods. So it means mood. Rasa means mood. So it's responsible for your moods. Rasa also means mood in the sense of bhav, which means, there's like different bhavs would be wonderment and awe or joy or, intensity or fiery. Like one of the words for rasa one of the translations or applications of the word rasa in the Sanskrit language is through the arts. So there's all these different, so imagine all the different theatrics of what you would see in a play or in a drama. Those are rasas. So there's these different moods or, things in drama. So rasa is a kind of like emotion, but not pure, like just emotion in its purest essence in your body. So the rasa is connected to that. So when the rasa dhatu is healthy in your body, it gives you an overall sense of ease and joy and love. It's responsible for affection because it's associated to kapha dosha. And kapha dosha, when it's healthy, is very affectionate. It's associated with the top layer of your skin, which is responsible for, a look of youthfulness. Like rasa dhatu is very robust when we're young, and it kind of dries out as we get older. And that is, why wrinkles appear. It's the topmost layer of the skin. So you have 7 layers of skin, and your topmost layer is associated to rasa dhatu. And the 6 dhatu layers underneath are actually associated to all the other 6 dhatus in your body. So this is why we always recommend people doing abhyanga or self-oil massage, because the oil, especially when you use herbalized oils, they're absorbing into the 7 layers of your skin, and they're delivering nutrition into the 7 layers, to the 7 bodily dhatus or tissues, while bypassing the gut agni. So you're getting nutrition into your body by simply applying it to the outside of your skin. So this is all rasa. So this is all connected to rasa. And in the female body, rasa is also, it has a byproduct. When rasa is formed, and you'll see this in the notes that I give you after class, but there's what we call the upadhatu. Upadhatu is a primary byproduct, but it's like a superior byproduct. So every time a tissue is formed, it creates another tissue, and it creates the raw materials for the next tissue. So the upadhatu of rasa, and this is getting a little bit, I hesitate to even bring some of these terms up to you because this is a very intro class, but I kind of just want to plant the seed for you that these other richness of things are happening deeper than what we're even talking about today. But this class might even be a series of classes. If you're interested in this topic and you want to go deeper, we can. Today, I'll endeavor to at least introduce it a little bit. But one of the byproducts, the upadhatu, or the superior byproducts of the formation of rasa in a female body, is also lactation and menstruation. So the menstrual fluids come from the accumulation of healthy rasa. So if this first and very foundational tissue of the body isn't properly formed, then a woman's most likely going to have menstrual problems. And so if a woman's having menstrual problems, when we go through like an Ayurvedic consultation, or even transition through, the later years, as menses cease, there can be imbalances that start to reveal themselves. And it's all because of rasa being improperly nourished. And then we can trace that back to, okay, well, how do we get rasa to be more properly nourished? Because hormonal levels, etc., they wouldn't be dipping so low if rasa was properly nourished. The loss of blood, or etc., that wouldn't be an issue if rasa was properly nourished, or if other kind of things weren't happening with rasa. So then we have to look back to agni What's going on with the digestion? What's the person eating? How is the person sleeping? What is the state of their emotional body? And how is rasa being affected in all these ways? So this is how some of these things are connected. So that's all rasa, prinanam, nourishment, affection, joy, etc. Then we mentioned rakta comes next. Rakta, its function is jivana. Now, jiva is another word that we use for the individual soul. So the sense of aliveness as soul comes into a body, it is life-giving. So rakta is jivana, is the jivana of the body, which meaning it does the function of jivana, allows us to experience the aliveness of our soul in our body. Functionally and physiologically, we think about oxygenation because it's red blood cells. But emotionally and energetically, it gives us a sense of feeling alive, of enthusiasm and invigoration. If something is off in Rakta Dhatu, we have no energy. We feel like death. We have a fear of death because we literally feel the life leaving us. So in certain conditions like anemia, for example, when Rakta Dhatu is not properly formed or low for some reason, we have the opposite experience of vigor and vitality. When there's a major acute traumatic injury to the body and someone's bleeding out, that's literally experience of Rakta Dhatu leaving the body, decreasing. So we're facing death. So if there's a general overall sense of lethargy, it could be this jivana function of Rakta Dhatu. It's not appropriate. It's not formed appropriately. There's lots of other reasons for lethargy, and usually it more so has to do with Agni being low, the fire of our gut being low and our metabolism. But if it's a Rakta Dhatu thing, you'll feel that too. Okay, so we have prinanam, jivanam, lepanam. These are the three functions of rasa, rakta, and mamsa. So now from the rakta tissue becomes more refined, and mamsa dhatu is formed. Mamsa is the muscle tissue, and it's responsible for our form, our movement, our safety, our strength, right? Because it's muscle. The next rasa, rakta, mamsa, I'm going back to our diagram. Actually, let's make that smaller. Now, the next tissue that's formed in this chain of refinement, and by the way, remember, these are each happening over the course of 5 days. So the meal you ate today, 5 days from now will be rasa, your plasma and lymph. 10 days from now, it'll be rakta, your red blood cells. 15 days from now, it will be your muscle tissue, mamsa. And 20 days from now, it will become your meda, your adipose tissue, or this is the fat in your body. Meda is a very important dhatu. It's responsible for snehana. Sneha is the Ayurvedic word for oil. It usually translates to oil and love. That's what like Ayurvedic yogi peoples who like to say, put oil all over your body because sneha means love. And it's true. That's how it feels. And we have that internally in our body through our Meda Dhatu. So we have a very dysfunctional culture who says you should have this impossibly thin waist as a woman and not have any fat on your body as a man. You should be chiseled, etc. Those body types are a very small percentage of high vata and high pitta type people. And not too far in our history of human beings was voluptuousness seen as the highest trait of beauty. And that is Meda Dhatu. So Meda Dhatu, Snehana, functionally, it provides lubrication to the body, insulation to the body for warmth, and just general bulk in the body, like a sense of fullness and also satisfaction. But emotionally, it's responsible for feeling beautiful and for experience and for creating beauty and love. So Meda Dhatu is emotionally connected to beauty and love. And it's Upadhatu, and I'm kind of picking and choosing how much I go into these byproducts, but I'll include them all in the chart for you in your notes. But interestingly, the Upadhatu of Meda are your tendons and ligaments. So a lot of times, like Vata type people who have a lot of air and wind in their constitution, not a lot of Meda, like they have a harder time with the formation of Meda. They might have more problems with their cracking and popping of joints because the tendons and ligaments, or even in any body type, if Meda Dhatu is not properly nourished and formed, so the tendons and ligaments might be weak, or they might be extra stiff and overdeveloped. So those can both be indicators of the health of Meda Dhatu. So we have Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa, Meda, the next tissue, which is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 days from now, the lunch or the meal you ate, 25 days from now will become Asti Dhatu. Asti Dhatu. And Asti is your bone tissue. So now each tissue is getting more and more refined. Rasa is creating Rakta, all the nutrients that Rakta it uses for its purposes, and then it passes the next nutrients on to Mamsa Dhatu, and then Mamsa passes it to Meda, Meda passes it to Asti. So I'm doing this with my hands, not because the tissues are getting smaller. It's not quantity, it's a refinement. Does that make sense? There's a more subtle refinement that's happening as we go. And the next 2 dhatus will really illustrate that well. So right now we're at Asti Dhatu. So Asti Dhatu does the function of dharana, D-H-A. The sound dha in the Sanskrit language is the root sound of support. It's the root sound of stability and support. So dharana, the bone structure of your body, is providing structure and support. Emotionally, what that translates to is a sense of protection. It also just physically protects your organs, right? So your vital organs are behind your rib cage or behind your skull. It does have a protective ability. But then there's also the emotional experience of, if my bones are strong, I feel protected, right? And then there's an inner sense of emotional stability and support as well. The Upadhatu, or the superior byproduct that comes from Asti Dhatu formation, is your teeth and your cartilage. So the softer, like Asti formation in your body, or your cartilage that, like your ear, like your nose. These are all they're not directly Asti Dhatu, but they're made from Asti Dhatu. And then interestingly, we also have, which I haven't spoke of yet, but there's a secondary or inferior byproduct that we call Dhatu Mala. Mala we often think of as, or translate as, waste, but it's not necessarily a waste product. It's just another byproduct. And when we look at, as clinicians or practitioners, we will assess the Upadhatus and the Dhatus to infer what's happening with the health of each dhatu. So the hair and the nails, like the hair on your head and your nails, the strength of them are indicative of your asti dhatu, your bone tissue, and your teeth and your cartilage. So this is how this is all connected through the Ayurvedic system. So rasa, rakta, mamsa, meda, asti. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So 25 days from now, the meal that you ate is becoming your bone tissue. And once those nutrients are filling the bone tissue, they pass on to the next tissue, which becomes even more refined, which is called majja. The word majja in Sanskrit means to fill the space. Its function is purana. Purana. Pur means to fill. Purana. So this is a very refined tissue because it is your nervous system. It's what your central nervous system is made out of. And it's actually also your bone marrow. So all the spaces in the bone are filled with majja. So in Ayurveda, the bone marrow and the nervous system are connected, as well as other connective tissues in your body, which is all an extension of majja dhatu. So it's, when you think of, you have sensation, nervous system tissue, nerve endings, and every part of your skin innervating every muscle and fiber in your body, bringing impulses of activity and also receiving information. So majja is this very refined tissue that fills all the spaces of all the other tissues with this refinement, with this ability to sense and communicate information. Emotionally, you can think of all the implications of, your central nervous system and nervous system in terms of emotionally, but majja as a dhatu, when the dhatu itself is properly formed and nourished, it provides a great ability for learning and for memory. So if memory is depleted, if recall is depleted, if you have a hard time grasping things, it might not just be in your head. It could be that majja dhatu is not properly nourished. And this is very common because look, it's the 6th tissue down the line of nourishment, right? So all these other tissues before it, rasa, rakta, mamsa, meda, asti, have to be properly nourished in order to pass these nutrients onto majja 30 days later. So it goes through this process. So there's also a sense when majja dhatu is depleted or not fully nourished, there's a sense of emptiness. There's a sense of confusion, which can be interpreted then by the mind in so many different ways. So when majja is properly nourished and filling the space with a high quality tissue, there's this sense that it removes the emptiness. It allows us to experience, the physical, emotional wholeness that we talk of in spiritual life, right? We're like, oh, I just want to feel whole. Something feels empty. Well, majja dhatu's not, maybe majja dhatu's not fully formed. So we need to go back. We need to make sure your agni is working well. We need to make sure that rasa is being properly nourished. We need to make sure all the dhatu agnis of each of these tissues are working properly to form itself, its upadhatus, its malas, and its next tissue. So every single tissue, the dhatu agni moves the tissue from astayi to stayi, which means from an immature form of the tissue into a matured form of the tissue. And it creates 2 byproducts, the upadhatu, the superior byproduct, and the dhatu mala, the secondary or inferior byproduct. And so all of those, for the whole body to be functioning, they all have to be nourished, because then they pass on the nutrition and the nourishment in layers upon layers upon layers, until we get to day 35 now, which the most refined tissue, and now this will complete the Saptadhatu exploration, which is the last tissue. So from your Maja Dhatu, this final tissue, the most refined tissue in your body is Artava Dhatu. I say Artava because I'm in a female body. But for male bodies, this is called Shukra. So I'll just put female, male. So this is the reproductive tissue. So Artava and Shukra are responsible for prajanana. There's a similar word in the English language, progenitor, right? Passing along of like the genes. Prajanana essentially translates to procreation and reproduction. So that's its physical function. And the emotional body, Artava and Shukra, your reproductive organs, are responsible for creativity. Any creative impulse, including artistic impulse, but creation in general, is the function, the emotional kind of function of Artava and Shukra. So I work a lot with women, so I will use these as more examples. But when there's challenges in the reproductive system through menses or menopause, and Artava is affected, as you can see, you end up looking up the whole line of rasa being properly formed, rakta, mamsameda, asti, and maja, before getting to Artava. But Artava itself can also be directly nourished by bypassing some of these, like I said, with the skin, when you put herbal medicine on the skin, it bypasses your digestion. There are other ways to directly nourish Artava. I do recommend certain types of herbs that help heal the gut and bring the medicine there. But there are also different external and internal applications directly into Artava Dhatu that help bring it back into balance and help it be nourished. But if there's this, general sense of malaise or lack of direction, purpose, creativity, and clarity, this also could be indicative of the nourishment of all the tissues and Artava not getting, nourished all the way. So what happens is that when Artava Dhatu and or Shukra is now formed, so this is the 7th tissue of this process of nourishment, it doesn't have necessarily an Upadhatu and a Mala exactly. They are responsible for secondary sex characteristics and things like that. But functionally speaking, the most important thing we need to remember is that Shukra and Artava produce ojas. So I'm going to write ojas here. So ojas there are different types of ojas, but ojas is essentially the most refined essence of life in our physical human body. And it's responsible for most people translate it to be immunity, but it's so much more beyond immunity. And this really specific type of ojas called para ojas is responsible for keeping our heart beating. So para ojas, Artava and Shukra, when all these 7 tissues are properly formed and nourished, it creates this byproduct that Artava and Shukra create, which is ojas. And this ojas, as I'm trying to indicate on this drawing, goes back to the heart to keep the heart pulsing. It's it's the para ojas that Dr. Ladd always said is what feeds the electrical impulse to the sinoatrial node that keeps the heart contracting. So beautiful, huh? So these 7 bodily tissues have to be properly nourished because it's what keeps our heart beating, which is then therefore responsible for the longevity of our life. If anything gets clogged along the way, if the agnis, the dhatu agnis, you have innumerable agnis, you have an agni in every single cell in your body, which is the intelligence of the cell, which is responsible for the transformation, not only of nutrients and energy creation, but it is the fire of life inside of the cell. But you have 40 main types of agni that we look at in the Ayurvedic system. You have elemental agnis, you have an agni for each of these 7 bodily tissues. You have an agni for the vata, pitta, kapha, all the subtypes, which vata has 5, pitta has 5, kapha has 5. I hope I'm not throwing too much language out at you if you're not well studied on Ayurveda already, but these are the 3 main elements of the body, functional, physiological, psychological constitutions of the body, but we all have all 3. And they have sub-doshas that each have their own agni. So all of these agnis, all of these fires, we as practitioners have to trace back, okay, what's going on? Which of the agnis are low? Or how do we optimize all the agnis? You know, which tissues aren't being formed properly? Which ones are being overformed and which ones are being underformed? So which ones are depleted and which ones are in excess? So if there's excess, basically if there's food that you eat that's not completely digested for whatever reason, and we get into the reasons because those are going to be some of your take-home practical homework, is to start reviewing in your own life to help optimize agni, to help optimize the nourishment of your tissues. But we have to look at, well, what are some of the reasons? Are they over? Is there undigested food that's going through the system? Because if your agni is low, no matter how clean of a diet you feel like you're eating, if you're eating, to beyond your capacity, to when you're full, instead of when you're just satisfied, leaving a little space in the stomach so the digestion can work well, you could be in a situation where over days, months, years, decades of your life, the whole system has been compromised. So we need to kind of trace it back, and we need to give agni a break, and we need to heal agni. Like Dr. Ladd always said, all diseases arise due to inadequate agni. Of course, there are other implications and connections to that, but even karmic connections and all kinds of other seemingly other things, still they impair the agni. So for example, if someone had repeated concussions because they were a sports player, athlete when they were a kid, and they had repeated concussions, well, maja dhatu could have an impairment. Therefore, the nutrients don't get past maja into shukra very well. It can create an impairment. So we call this a kavaigunya. So there could be family history predispositions to certain things. There could be different types of traumas, whether it was emotional traumas or physical traumas, that impaired the agni on any of the levels of the body. We also mentioned earlier, like we're not just talking food, we're talking about energetic digestion. Even if we just simply haven't been able to digest our memories and experiences from the past, it will deplete our agni. So how do we stoke the agni so that we can digest everything coming in through our 5 senses, as well as our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, more optimally, so that these tissues are getting nourished? These are the main questions that we need to ask ourselves as we go through this process. So I hope that I feel like I didn't even do this topic justice. This is such a big, beautiful topic, but I do feel like this lens is rarely talked about, in the Ayurveda world, out there on the interwebs. Like, even in, yoga teacher trainings, it's usually like the basics. And so I've had a lot of like students and clients, they just keep asking me for more of this because it's so rich and it's so beautiful and it's so dynamic. And this is like just the beginning. These 7 tissues, we're looking at them almost like individually as if they're just like a stagnant thing that just one day appeared and not like a dynamic living process, right? Like right now, we're just kind of taking a snapshot of what these tissues are. But this is happening every single meal that you eat, every single day. This is all happening from 35 days ago. The meals you ate are becoming Artava and Shukra. From 15 days ago, those meals are actively becoming your Mamsa right now. Like the way that it unfolds is like mind-boggling and literally awesome. Like it's just incredibly beautiful. And like when you think about, when you bring it back to just the very simple daily practices, we need to honor the digestive fire as best as possible through our current level of awareness to help this process of nourishment. Because guess what? Even though we were talking about each step of the way, each dhatu being properly formed allows for this emotional experience. You also cultivating these emotional experiences in your life feeds the dhatus energetically. So it goes together. There's no separation there. But these 7 dhatus, we can go deeper and deeper and dive into their active channels. So they create what we call in Ayurveda the shrotamsi. Shrotas it's like a channel or a vessel. And there are different shrotas in our body, which are the full system and how they all interact with one another in a really dynamic way. So it's not just like this process of tissue nutrition, dhatu nutrition is happening every single day, every single meal, through the flame of your Agni, through the fire of your awareness, and through the development of your self-care. And this is just the beginning. So it's a very beautiful system. May we continue to dialogue together and dive in together. I want to make sure we're just over an hour. So I want to make sure I get your questions answered and leave you with a few take-home practices that you can use right away to apply. So I'm going to pull up. Do I have to stop sharing in order to see the chat box? Maybe. Okay. I have the questions here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. I'm going to leave the screen sharing for now in case it prompts any of your questions. And I'm going to pull up the list of questions I have here. Okay. Once I go through the questions, and then I'll leave you with the final practices. Okay, so questions. Is it okay to cook meals in big batches and then freeze it in portions for later? This is a great question because the absolute purist, Ayurvedic purist would say, frozen meals, the prana goes down, the vata goes up, etc. It isn't the best idea from the most pure perspective. But my perspective is a practical one. Like you have to think of everything to do with food on a spectrum of what's most supportive to you and what's unsupportive to you. So for you, I always recommend, so if you are going to freeze or refrigerate anything, the sooner you eat it, the better. The more prana is restored, is not restored, is kind of held and sustained. Freezing actually is better than refrigeration, I think. If you are going to eat leftovers, within 24 hours is most ideal. And after that, the prana kind of rapidly decreases and the vata influences increase, meaning it can create kind of gas and bloating, and the food just kind of feels dead. Like there's just not that much life-giving force in it. But freezing seems to, like, I do use freezing with certain things in our garden. Like when you flash freeze something that's fresh, it tends to retain pretty well, in my opinion. And I mostly recommend that you experiment with things. If you have body awareness and you're refining your self-awareness, it's good to experiment. And you say, well, when I make this type of meal and I freeze it and then I reheat it or whatever, it feels still life-giving, or do I feel a little lethargic and sleepy after I eat? Do I feel agitated after I eat it? So you want to start a self-awareness practice around everything. And this goes for all of you, not just this question. But then kind of practically speaking, I think it's significantly better to cook your own food and reheat it, whether that, like, it's frozen or leftover or whatever, is still significantly more nourishing all around than not doing that and having to grab some snack on the go or eat out, where the energy, you don't know whose energy is going into the food, right? That kind of thing. So to answer your question there, yeah, I would say, sure, it's okay to cook meals in batches and freeze it in portions for later, if that's what works for your current life and schedule. I don't know, like, who the person the question's coming from, I don't know if they have kids or a job, if they live in a city, right? There are like so many different factors that that come into play here. But I hold self-cooking as one of the highest acts of self-love and self-nourishment. And that is superior to the idealism of, it's not practical to make a fresh meal every single meal of every single day for most people, right? The society doesn't support that, unfortunately. And then things that you want to take into consideration if you are going to do batch cooking and freeze for portions for later is, how are you reheating it? And for how long are you letting it stay frozen? So for the smaller amounts of time, the better. Because still remember that the longer it's held frozen, the longer, the more prana will start to leave. And the more that cold element, which is what imbalances vata, infuses into the thing. And it, and then what do you serve it with? So are you reheating it in a microwave, which can neutralize a lot of the nutrients? If that's all you have access to because you work at a job and that's the only way to heat it up, by all means, just go for it. Let it defrost at room temperature and try to do as minimal, reheating with a microwave as possible. But if that's all you got, that's what you got. If it is possible to put it in a pan, and reheat it over, the actual stove, that's even better. So just consider that. Also, what are you serving it with? So there are certain things that I notice work pretty well to reheat. Like, and this is just my experimentation, so I'll share with you all, is that previously cooked vegetables, reheating them more than just 24 hours, they feel dead to me. Like it's not even worth it. But if you're going to do a soup with vegetables and then you freeze that or you refrigerate that, that somehow seems to have some magic element in it, especially if there's hot spices in it, like black pepper, hing, something that stokes Agni, ginger, so within 24 hours with veggies. But I've noticed I do some batch cooking sometimes, but I will do just rice or just beans separately, and then kind of not really can them. I'll keep them in the fridge, but I'll just keep them plain by themselves. And then I'll mix them together with other things later and do like a stir fry with the rice, and I'll do fresh vegetable, or I'll put those things over a salad or something. And there are certain Ayurveda teachers or practitioners that will teach that cooked foods and raw foods aren't a good combination. And I have to disagree with that. That hasn't been my experience. And then one of my Ayurveda mentors kind of debunked that whole myth for me. And I was like, thank you. I knew that didn't feel right. It seems fine, especially if you have a more plant-based diet. It's more accessible to like have a whole salad if you're a Vata type, that you put some fresh cooked veggies on real quick, and it makes the salad warmer and more satisfying in some ways. So those are just a few side notes. That was a long answer for that question. The next question I have is raw vegetables. How often and what amounts are accessible or acceptable? It's all up to personal tolerance and current state of digestive system. So I've had 3 Ayurvedic mentors that are Vaidya level, meaning they're full-blown Ayurvedic physician, and they work with Ayurvedic medicines from India. And so they've been practicing for a very long time. 2 of my mentors were Indian bodied and very much mixed a lot of Indian cooking and culture into the translation of Ayurveda. And then one of them was European bodied and has a totally different take on keeping those things separate. Not that they can't go together, but helped me understand different ethnic body types and how their Agni predispositions are kind of geared, and therefore what amount of raw foods and cooked foods they can eat, etc. So there are a lot of like nuances here, but I would say, to answer that question, the amount of raw vegetables that you're able to eat is completely up to your digestive fire and what sounds good to you. I'm a huge supporter and encourager of people to learn how to find and follow their natural appetite. So in my programs, so like I ran this spring, we did a cleanse called Kapha Melt, and it was around how to reduce mucus and inflammation in the body. And we'll probably do another one this fall to optimize Agni and digestion. But when I run those programs, I do have them recorded. So if anyone wants, they all come with a consultation with me and my Vaidya, my Vaidya mentor, and you can go through the whole program. And basically the program itself is step by step, like how to understand and wrap your mind around all these things about food and Ayurveda and the qualities of foods. And then how to basically restore your natural appetite, because most of our inner prompts from our body, once we're cleansed, we can trust our inner prompts, and our body will crave exactly what it needs to put it into balance. Your dhatus will have their own cravings and will ask you to eat a certain thing. But if we're clogged, if our channels are clogged and our Agni is impaired, we actually can't trust our cravings for a period of time. And that's when we need to follow Ayurvedic rules and suggestions to get ourselves back into a state of naturalness. And then once we're back in the state of naturalness, then we can start to increase our body awareness and learn from our body's prompts. And then that's when Rasa, Rakta, Mamsameda, Asti, Maja, and Artava, they all crave exactly what they need to be nourished. And it won't always make sense to your mind, but that's a good thing, because most of the time we are in our mind way too much. We're fed so much information out there in the holistic health world that is injecting fear into our psyche around everything to do with food, even natural stuff. all the marketing, it still uses fear tactics, just like, a lot of Western medicine uses fear tactics to fear us into thinking we don't know what's right for our body and that you need to eat this and not that. And then we get so confused. It's like information overload, conflicting advice. It's mind craziness. So instead, we have to learn, like I teach in the Kapha Melt class, it's like how to disengage from all that noise, purify, cleanse, come into right relationship with your body, with your Agni. And then from there, trust your cravings. So again, another big answer to a simple question about raw vegetables, but it's not just a straightforward answer because there's all these other layers. And I want to see you get to the place of trusting that, that inner prompt, the prompt of clarity and of what's actually most true for you, not prompts, the cravings, that what we call false cravings, which are coming from imbalance and depletion. Okay, next question. And if there's any other questions, please keep them coming. I'm going to stop this share now. Okay, next question. How often and what time of the day is it preferable to drink detox tea? For the most highest efficacy of detoxifying type teas, you take them on an empty stomach, like 2 hours after a meal or 30 to 60 minutes before a meal. So it's usually on an empty stomach between meals, particularly in the afternoon between lunch and dinner is a really good time to do a detox tea. Because sometimes if you drink them too close to bed, you'll have to wake up in the middle of the night to urinate. And most of the time in the mid-afternoon, because it's Vata time, people get snacky and they have false hunger cravings and they want to just eat. So it's good to drink the tea then because it satisfies the need for something while being grounding and helping your body cleanse. Next question, how do we find our doshas? Tests at different websites are showing very different proportions. A lot of times the online quizzes are very inaccurate. And that's usually because of how we're answering the questions. And it's just not as straightforward. So it's easiest to just talk to a practitioner and just get clear so and you can take all the guesswork out. But a lot of times what happens mostly is that Vata and Kapha get mixed up because people think Vata people think they're having symptoms of Kapha, but they're really Vata symptoms. So then it throws off the results of your tests. So the best way is just have a consultation. And I think I have just 2 more questions here. And if there's any more, keep putting them in the chat. If proportions of Vata and Pitta are almost the same, how do you choose foods to eat? So a lot of times you'll find a lot of people are what we call dual doshic. So they have 2 predominant doshas. So some people might have 1 predominant dosha, and then some people will have dual dosha. So they have 1 predominant and 1 secondary. And then some people will have, like myself, actually, so this is an easy question for me, not easy, but for me to answer, when 2 doshas are almost equal. And then there's the very small percentage of people that have all 3 doshas that are almost equal, which is really actually the most challenging. People think that that's good, but it's not good or bad. It's just more challenging to deal with because then you have lots of variables. But if you have 2 that are primary, so in this question, it was Vata and Pitta, basically you just have to find foods that don't aggravate either one. So Vata Pitta specifically, this goes a little bit outside the context of today's class, so I don't want to go too off topic here, but you have to look at the qualities. So each dosha has about 5 to 7 qualities under it. So you want to actually look at the nuanced qualities for each of you. So if you're a Vata Pitta person who's asking this question, if you're a Vata Pitta person and they're almost equal, first you have to look at what season are you in? Is it spring, summer, fall, winter? How dry or wet of a climate do you live in the season that you're in? And then you look at what symptoms are you currently having, what's a little off in your body, and then you actually match your diet to those. For example, if you're a Vata Pitta person and it's summertime, I'm probably going to eat more of a Pitta diet because it's summer, it's hot, the days are long, there's a lot of light, so I don't want to aggravate Pitta. So I'm going to refrain from eating chilies and hot peppers and jalapenos and spicy things. I'm going to try to do more cucumber and cilantro and mint and cooling hibiscus tea brewed in the sun or in the moonlight instead of, hot tea. So these are some of the things to think about. And then, but if I'm Vata Pitta person and it's winter, well, my Vata is going to be higher. So I can tolerate a little bit more black pepper or ginger, perhaps. But I'm going to need warm cooked foods and stews and stuff to keep Vata grounded, and a little bit more oil. I might tolerate less oil in the summer because I'm Pitta, and Pitta is oily and hot. So that's just a quick, you look at the season you're in and your symptoms and the qualities of the environment and the qualities of the food. So that could totally be another class if you're all interested in that. Okay, last two questions. Oh, thank you, Kaylee. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Kali or Kaylee. Thank you very much for your kind words. And okay, I will put, so she's asking for the links to book a one-on-one. I'll put that in there. And then also the spring and fall detox classes. Okay, so I will get that information to you all. And then let me go to the questions, and then I will send that. I have two more questions. Okay. When one detoxes and then goes back to eating the wrong foods for the dosha, how badly are we damaging the body? So it depends on how significant, like what you mean by wrong foods. So it sounds like there's a self-judgment being put onto whatever, like going. So one of the things I like to work a lot with psychology. So it's more like when we think about, going on a diet and going off a diet, there's always this kind of like push pull. Then we're like, well, I was doing good and then I got off track, or I was doing good and now I'm being bad, or I was doing things right and now I'm doing them wrong. So my approach is like to be really careful with the black and white kind of language, or to worry too much about, we always want to be in touch with the repercussions or consequences of our actions, of course. So like your question, how badly are we damaging the body? But rather than that, I'm just more interested in what would really like support you to continue making choices on a more consistent basis, slightly more consistent than was in the past, to, staying, making healthful choices for your unique constitution in whatever stage of life you're finding yourself in and whatever season you're in. Yeah. So I would say, don't worry about damage, because the body can realign in a minute, in a heartbeat, and it's just, everything is moment to moment awareness and nourishing decisions. And if we're not able to consistently maintain nourishing decisions, there's usually like a subconscious reason for that. So it's better if we can get to the root of that subconscious reason and help resolve that, then the habits are just a natural extension of self-care. So that's my approach. Thank you for asking. That's a really good question, because a lot of people, I think, have that question. Okay, next question. You have to consider food sensitivities in Ayurveda food selection. Absolutely. Yeah, when someone has the self-awareness of like, I eat this food and I have this effect, we always want to consider that. And yeah, what are the reactions? And then we have to look at, well, why? why is the body reacting that way to that food? What's the physical thing going on? What's the irritation in the system? What has developed? What's happened to Agni? What's even, some hidden psychological, emotional connections to that food, and what does it represent? There could be some things there, right? So yeah, these are all things that are always taken into consideration. Thank you for asking. And let me get the links to you, and I will leave you with some take-home messages. Again, if you're not yet on my email list for receiving the notes, go to alicialyndiaz.com and then click the button, either workshops, trauma healing, and it'll take you to like the opt-in page for my emails. And then you'll be able to get the email. You can always, you'll get the notes from today's session. You're also welcome to always email me at alicialyndiaz.com. hello@alicialyndiaz.com. And if you're watching this as a recording, there's a link below to schedule a consultation, a 60-minute Ayurveda consultation. And for those of you who are on the live session, that link is here in the chat box. And yeah, if you're on the email list, you'll also get notice to when I do the fall cleanse. And if you don't want to wait till the fall, you can always join the cleanse program. And basically everyone that joins the cleanse program gets a consultation with me and with my Vaidya. We created the program together. And so it's pre-recorded. And so you can go through it. If you don't want to wait for like a group to go through it, you can go through it anytime. It's called Kapha Melt, and I can have that information for you. And if anything, if you don't find it on my website, you can always email me, hello@alicialyndiaz.com. And I can always send it to you that way. So the last thing I want to just leave you with are some take-home things to consider for optimizing Agni, because that's the main thing, right? Optimizing Agni to help the whole cascade of tissue nourishment. So three main things. Let's keep it simple. Three main things. So the first thing is increase hydration and plant fiber. Increase hydration and plant fiber. 2, and I'm going to give details on each one. 2 is decrease heavy foods. I'll give more details on that. But basically you want to decrease the overloading of Agni. And 3 is you want to support the channels of elimination, increase elimination. And now these are very broad categories, but these are the main points to get across. So the first one, increase hydration and plant fiber. A lot of times what happens is like, right, baked goods, carbohydrates, sugars, stuff like that, they are very addictive, and they're immediately satiating, but they're clogging. And they kind of get stuck in the gut, and they reduce also dry snacks, chips and crackers and cookies and stuff like that. And I'm not making any of these things wrong or bad. I'm just illustrating the qualities of them, things that kind of dry out the GI tract. So if you increase plant fibers, meaning roughage, right, and you'll feel more satiated, and it will increase the hydration in your gut. So you want to increase the warm water that you drink, increase the hot herbal tea that you drink, You can even do bonus things like kindle Agni through the hot tea that you drink, meaning ginger teas, turmeric teas, um, any kind of herbal tea that you like. But I say herbal, that just means non-caffeinated tea, because most caffeines actually dry you out more. And so they clog the channels a little bit, and they do other things too to the nervous system. So first thing is increase hydration, drink more water. You can have Ayurvedic limeade, which is just room temperature, pure water, like filtered water or spring water. You can have just that, or you can have that water with lime juice and a pinch of salt and some maple syrup. And that actually make it in the combination that most tastes great to you, that most appeals to you. This will be your first experiment with trusting, the signals of your body. You're like, oh, what's my measurement? No, there's no recipe. You're just going to put in the proportions of those things that taste the best, and then drink that throughout the day. And start your day with that. You can have it warm with warm water, and you start your day with that, and it sets you up for a day of hydration. Start your day with 16 ounces of that as the first thing you put in your mouth. And then drink that between meals throughout the day and just really hydrate. This is going to start to allow lemon water. So you can put lemon or lime. Lime is better if you have hyperacidity, or if our pitta type, you want to use lime because lime's cooling. Lemon's a little heating. Some people will feel a little bloated if they do lemon. Some people don't. So if lemon works for you, use it. But otherwise, we generally use lime. Maple syrup, 100% pure, like grade A or B maple syrup, because it's full of minerals and electrolytes, and it tastes great. And then a pinch of pink Himalayan salt. So again, a high mineral content salt. Again, it adds, so the hydration, drinking that will hydrate the stomach lining. A hydrated stomach lining releases proper digestive enzymes. And your food digests in a liquid medium. So then also it helps lubricate the GI tract, and it supports the channels of elimination. And that kind of translates over to point number 3, where I said you increase elimination. So the more fluid, especially the warm liquids, the more the tissues dilate, and it helps you have a bowel movement. So under point 3, since we're talking about it, increasing elimination channels also means we do what we call, I call it colon training, because most people kind of get up and go, and they actually override their nervous system's need to just be still and relaxed to release a bowel movement. So your bowel movements should happen because you wake up naturally with the rhythms of the sun, and you're not waking up to an alarm, and then you get the natural cascade of neurotransmitters, and it allows your gut to release yesterday's leftover material and everything that your body detoxed overnight. But that's not necessarily the society we live in today. We wake up to alarms, etc. So we want to do our best to at least give our bowels an opportunity to be trained, which is you sit in the morning after drinking your warm water, or who knows, while you're even on the toilet, drink your warm water, but you put your feet up. And there's a whole, what do they call it? The squatty potty. You can watch on YouTube any of these videos on the squatty potty, and they'll show you with lots of funny cartoons how basically how the valve, the sphincter valve, works for your colon. So when you sit at 90 degrees, it actually cuts it off. This is one of the main reasons, one of the fundamental reasons why people's colons get backed up, is simply from sitting on toilets. It's so backwards to our nature. So instead we elevate our feet, and you put yourself in a squat position, and it allows the tendons and ligaments to be in a position that it allows that valve to open naturally and eliminate. So it's so amazing. So if you're well hydrated and there's healthy mucosal lining in your colon, which actually is also the dhatu mala of maja, is the epithelial mucosal lining of your colon. So if you have constipation issues, we have to look back at maja nourishment. So anyway, this is part of that third point. Increasing elimination includes hydration, and it includes some colon training, which is every morning for at least 5 minutes, you're sitting with your feet elevated, relaxed, without having to rush, to allow the body to start relaxing into letting go of yesterday's waste. It's huge because you need to make room. If anyone who's having dhatu impairments or actual digestive issues with bloating, gas, discomfort, any kind of a slew of other things, even hyperacidity, all kinds of things, can all just be due to the improper elimination channels. They're not working. So we need to optimize them. And that's just the first step. And then the second step, let me give you a few more details on that, and this will be the last one, is to not overload Agni. Now there's so many details I can give you in this. Decrease the overloading of Agni. So look at your current diet and identify the heavy foods that you're eating and just eat a little bit less of them. So in the first point, we're increasing plant fiber. The more plant fiber you increase, you're going to feel more satiated. You're also going to get all kinds of micronutrients from the rainbow colors of plants that you're not going to need as much of the heavy stuff. And I'll define what I mean by heavy stuff. But you want that to start to replace them. So this isn't about black and white, good, bad, right, wrong. This is about, well, I increase more of the good, and it just doesn't leave as much room for the other stuff. I don't need as much of the other filler stuff that was clogging me up anyway. So we're not talking about elimination diets. We're not talking about drastic changes. I don't really believe in dramatic, drastic changes because they don't stick, right? Kaylee, it's like what I said before. We go on a diet, we go off a diet. It's like, it's too dramatic. We need to do things in more gentle ways that they can become a natural part of who we are. And then we don't have to think of them so hard. We can it becomes part of our nature and our habit. And sure, sometimes we might have to use a little willpower, but for now, my suggestion is to just do a little bit less of the heavy stuff and more of the good stuff. So the heavy stuff I'll define as anything that's really sticky and hard to digest. Sticky and hard to digest in foods include wheat, bread, baked goods, meat, dairy, and like lots of different proteins in one single meal. So all of the Ayurvedic food combining, if you've ever looked into any of that, is mostly like, it talks about, well, don't eat beans and cheese, and don't eat meat and cheese and beans all together. Like, it's basically multiple proteins all piled into one. But if you start to replace some of those heavy meat, dairy, and wheat, which are the three heaviest, stickiest, most clogging things, with like plant-based proteins, like simply nuts and seeds, legumes, and some grains, which are very building, very oily, protein-rich building foods. You can get all the protein and nutrients you need from fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, grains, and legumes. They're like these are vast categories of foods that you can get everything that you need, and you would have so much more energy. So in general, if you can increase plant foods and decrease the heavy stuff like meat, wheat, and dairy, you'll start to support your Agni. Your Agni will start to burn more brightly, and you'll actually absorb more of the nutrients into your tissues that you want. Now, even if you are already, say you're eating like nearly a vegan diet and it's mostly plants and you're still having the challenges with your Agni, it could also have to do with the like overeating. So decreasing heavy foods is also eating until you're satiated, not full. So we should never eat until we're full. Sometimes there's this thing that happens, at least this was like a familial thing that got passed down. There's like this race. It's like, oh, I'm starting to get full. I better eat more because it tastes so good. You know, it's like, I'm starting to get full. I better eat faster. So it's like this funny, like familial thing in my family. So I had to like break that in me. I could feel myself start to do that. And then I'd be like, oh, you know, and the more times we eat to capacity, it starts to stretch our stomach, and our stomach grows to adapt to that. And then we keep eating to capacity because there's stretch receptors in our stomach that make us feel full. And so when our stomach grows, we need more food to feel satisfied. But our Agni, meaning all the 40 Agnis, all the Agnis of your stomach, your small intestine, your colon, your liver, your 7 dhatus, and so on, your every cell, metabolism, all the Agnis, they can't handle that much of a load. So it's not just about, so Dr. Ladd always said, you should eat and stop when there's still a little feeling of lightness in your stomach. And that's something that's very subtle. Like I had to really train myself to do that because I didn't realize that actually, even if you overeat a quarter of a cup, it can turn into ama, what we call toxins in the body in Ayurveda. A quarter cup. You know how small a quarter cup is? A quarter cup is just like, what is it? 4 to 6 tablespoons or something. If I got to do that measurement, but a quarter cup it's small. So we have to, that means we have to eat slowly. That means we have to chew to our food is liquid before we swallow it. That means we have to be aware when our eyes are bigger than our stomach and we need to take a smaller portion. You know, we have to increase our awareness and eat slower and then pause and remind ourselves that we're going to survive if we don't eat that next bite, or everything will survive, right? There's like a little bit, sometimes this is where some of the subconscious mind stuff comes in, and things that I've personally worked through, like having certain disorders, or you feel like you need more, you're not getting the nutrients you need, so you eat, right? But it's that quarter cup that just can put us over the edge, and then we're still not actually getting what we need. But it's not because of not enough, it's actually because of too much. So the too much substance clogs our channels. It depletes the Agni. It's like putting a big log on top of a little fire, and the log stays, and just the little edge of the log gets charred, and then it doesn't fully combust. So we need our food. So you'll get more energy sometimes from a little bit less of a portion. And those tissues will actually get nourished as a result, especially if you're decreasing the heavy stuff and increasing the vegetables. Like my current Vaidya mentor, he's put me on different cleanses over the last 7 years. I've been mentoring with him. And there was one period of time where he said, well, you could just eat an entire bowl of steamed broccoli to your heart's content. And I kind of felt like, oh, come on, no, I couldn't do that. I was like, that's so lame. It's so boring. But when I actually gave myself a chance to do it, and I made like a nice sauce and flavor, I was so satisfied by this big, or like a stir fry of vegetables, you know? And I didn't realize how satisfying that could be, because my mind had told me, well, you need to have the proper ratio of carbohydrates and fat and proteins, and I'm like, where did that programming come from? The FDA doesn't actually have our best interest in mind, like, no disrespect. But I was just like, wow, so again, coming back to naturalness and starting to break free of some of those mental programmings that keep us in separation from the intelligence of the body. So the Ayurveda lives inside of your every cell. The Ayurveda, a Vaidya is an Ayurvedic doctor. It's one who embodies the knowledge of the Ayurveda. The Ayurveda is the intelligence that lives inside of each and every one of us, inside of every cell. The Agni is the home of the Ayurveda. So if you want to feed the holy in your body, feed the holy in nature, properly develop a proper relationship with that fire, and all the intelligence comes back into your cells and you start thriving. So I'll leave you with that final thought. Kaylee, yes, I would be happy to teach the 20 gunas. That would be a great class. Yeah, thank you for suggesting that. So all my love to all of you. I'll sing one closing prayer. Thank you for being in such a long, enjoyable class today. I hope it wasn't too boring. I hope it was enriching. And yeah, much more to come. Maybe we'll make this a series. For those of you who want the more personalized support, please book a time on my calendar. I'd love to meet you one-on-one and speak with you and get you the support you need. And any of you who have questions for ongoing, episodes, classes, etc., you can always email me, hello@alicialyndiaz.com, or for any of your questions, hello@alicialyndiaz.com. And then sign up for our emails where I send the recordings to these classes, the notes to these classes, and upcoming, upcoming notices that we're going to have a live class. That's also on my website, alicialyndiaz.com. And then click the button that says workshops or trauma healing, and it'll take you to the page that you can opt in. Thank you all for your loving words in the chat, and sending you all my love. And may this transmission and information benefit all beyond all of us into the greater world around us, supporting all beings on all levels of existence. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Shanti. Peace to you all. Lots of love. Sharon, I see your message and I'm writing it down. All right, friends. Thank you. Blessings. Oh, Kaylee, the notes, I'm going to email them. Yeah. And if you send me an email, hello@alicialyndiaz.com, I can also just send it to you directly if you want. But once this video finishes rendering, and then I can send it out. So it'll be in a few hours from now. Okay. Love you all. Blessings. Nice to see your face, Sharon. I love your butterflies. Oh, I can't hear you.
We had 3 butterflies this year. I got 2 last year, only I didn't understand that they have to wait for their wings to dry before they can fly. So last year I had these 2 butterflies crawling around on the ground, and I'm standing there yelling at them, "You're not a caterpillar anymore." So this one, his wings had already dried, but this one was literally hanging out to dry. But anyway, he flew away too. But I felt so badly about the butterflies I was abusing last year because I didn't know that they had to wait for
No.
their.
It's that's such a beautiful image, and it's such a metaphorical reminder, right? That sometimes when we feel like we're in the thick of it, it's whatever
Our
fight
wings,
in
yeah, we can't
us
fly because
to
our
get
wings.
out.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's
thank
helping us. It's actually helping us develop our wings.
you. Oh, okay.
Aw, so sweet. Thank you for sharing. I hope
Bye.
to see you all soon. Bye.